This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to the Human-Animal Connection Show, where we believe we can communicate with all animals. Join us as we explore the 33 principles and healing methods of the human-animal connection. As animal lovers, we know that you share our commitment to making the world a kinder place for all creatures. Together, let's embrace the transformative healing power of the human-animal connection.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Human Animal Connection Show. I'm your host, Michael Overly, and I'm with Jeannie Joseph, and we've got, yes, another fantastic episode for you. Hey, Jeannie.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, I keep getting better every minute. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we have 3 dogs in the house. We have a visiting dog. We're doing some healing with a rescue that was adopted from the reservation. So we've had fun with 3 dogs in the house.
Indigo hurt her wrist or something. We're trying to keep her down a little bit. And then she and I got charged by a pit bull that dove out of an SUV at us when we were walking yesterday. So that was interesting.
Oh,
so yeah, we're trying to just
chill. Okay. You both okay? You both okay?
Oh yeah. I turned around and charged the dog back because I wasn't going to get bitten in the butt.
Yeah. Okay. Well, today in episode 114, we are entering, or actually the subject is opening the door to animal communication. So this is an introductory conversation for those of you who've had some experience with it. For those of you who are new to it, that's just fine. We got to start somewhere, right? So the basic principle that we have in the human-animal connection is this idea that animals are communicating all the time. It's just that we don't always know what they're saying. So some of it is us learning their language, and some of it is they're learning ours, and some of us as we meet on a third level, which is the level of pure awareness, pure consciousness. It's a very exciting realm. So I recognize that for some people, this may be a whole new idea, the idea that we can communicate with animals. We know we talk to them. We say, good doggy. We're communicating also in different ways, but there can be a level of communication that's really transformative. And that's what we're all about. And we wanted to start with the 7 principles to opening the door to animal communication. So this is a place for people who maybe are hopeful that animal communication is possible, but maybe you're not convinced, which is just fine. I don't think anybody should be convinced until they've had an experience that is compelling and changes people's minds. So that's just fine if you think that this might be a stretch, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but we want to take you on that stretch. We believe in stretching, right? So the first principle is that we ask our students to consider the possibility that animal communication is possible. So that's step 1, is just to say, I don't know if it's true, but I'm willing to consider that it might be true. And maybe other people can do it. And if other people can do it, maybe I can do it, because it really doesn't require any psychic ability. It just requires intuitiveness and the ability to listen. So we're going to kind of walk people through those steps. But I say to people that if you could just consider it. Maybe you're past the consideration stage. Maybe you're in the believing stage. If you're in the believing stage that animal communication is possible, then I'm going to ask you to trust it. Trust your own ability to communicate with animals. So the biggest obstacle we find for students who are approaching animal communication is self-doubt. The idea that I can't do this, or I'm making this up, or it's just my own voice. You know what I mean? So that is the major hurdle, is to understand the difference between receiving information and giving information. So we'll talk more about that. So the first step is just the willingness to consider or believe or trust that animal communication is possible. The second step is to consider that you can do it, that this is something that you can do. It's not just something that I can do or my teachers can do or the experts can do, but this is something that, I think it was Wallace Black Elk who said, there was a time when we spoke to the animals and the animals spoke to us, so this was part of the culture. And so children were born with this ability and didn't lose it. A lot of children have, before the age of 6 or 7, they can do this. And until somebody tells them, oh, you're making it up, or that's just imagination, or something like this, where they start to hide it and then they lose it and then they can't do it. So we want to recapture that childlike innocence that believes or knows or trusts that it is possible to communicate with animals. Did you ever have an experience like that, Michael, for yourself as a child, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have known how to classify that as a kid.
Right.
But it was just natural, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're talking about here is a natural process. It's actually unnatural to think that you can't talk to them. You know what I mean? So it's just that our culture hasn't supported us in this, hasn't trained us in this. And so now it takes some training to get back to what is natural. And that's what we're all about. So the second principle has to do with believing that it's possible for you to consider that possibility if you're just getting started, to believe it if you're further in that track, and if you're even further along than that, to trust that this is something that you can do. And this is going to be a lifelong practice, because like learning any language, you can learn some basics and maybe, order in a restaurant or something, but to be fluent, you're going to have to be practicing. And so I'm always practicing and learning, and the animals will teach me to perfect my communication skills. So this is not something that you get to like a diploma and you're done. This is a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And that means that whenever you have the opportunity that feels appropriate, you explore it. You say, like there's sometimes I'll watch a dog walking down the street with other owners and I'm not even near that dog, and I'll just, tune in and see if the dog has anything it wants to say, or, just have a little moment. And sometimes it's just a simple moment of just acknowledging. And usually the dog will just stop and look at me like, what? You talking to me? Like there's a sort of surprised at first, and then they get used to it that I'm somebody that does this. And it's just really expands your world. So the third principle is, again, remember I mentioned that the number one obstacle is self-doubt. And so we are going to be in a process of both trusting and refining. So it's a dual process. When I say trusting, I mean trusting your intuition, trusting that you are hearing something. Now, in the beginning, it's possible that you might be mishearing, meaning you might hear your own thoughts or your own perceptions or your own prejudices or, your own perceptions or projections. That is definitely a part of the process, is that we are in a refining process. And what we want to do is, in step 4, is we want to begin to experience the sensation, the difference between sending a thought, which is like thinking, ordinary thinking, and receiving a thought, which is like listening. So it's the difference between, I can dial a number and I can call you up, Michael, and I know what that feels like, or I can have the phone ring and I pick it up and I listen. So the difference between generating a call and receiving a call might be a good metaphor to think of this. And it's very subtle at first. At first, people are like, well, I don't know what the difference is between my thoughts and my receiving. And so that's a stage of development, a stage in the learning process in step 4, where we are really paying attention to what it feels like to think and to, generate from between our ears versus what it feels like to receive. And receiving may even come from a different place in your body. You might feel it in your heart or in your stomach, or, who knows where you're going to be feeling it. The native population talks about hearing from the feet, like they can hear from the feet, like elephants do. They hear, the sounds and rhythms from the earth and from other elephants from their feet. They feel that sensation. So we are expanding the idea of listening to be something beyond just what we think of with our ears, hearing words with our ears, and hearing or feeling from our heart. And it doesn't have to be the heart, but I'm just to use that example, is that we want to really expand the notion of what listening is. So I'm going to say that listening is peaceful receiving. Listening is peaceful receiving. What I mean by peaceful is that we're not imposing an emotional state or desire. I want this dog to love me. That's not listening. And receiving is how does the dog feel? Is just really experiencing what that dog wants to share. And so that's a really important distinction that's subtle, but really changes the whole game plan. Really changes the whole game plan when we can do that. Does that make sense?
Yes. I was at I just pulled up to an outdoor gear shop here in Fort Collins.
Yeah.
And when I pulled up, there's some guy, his dogs were sitting outside waiting for him. And I was like, yay, dogs. So I get out and I go heading towards the door, but I beeline for the dogs. And I got, dude, don't. Mm-hmm. And I like stopped. I'm like, but all dogs love me. But it was very strong. And I said, I stopped and I stood up tall and said, okay. And then he relaxed again and turned away.
Right. Excellent. Excellent communication, and that turn away is the end of the sentence. It's like the exclamation mark when the dog said yes. So, you got it.
You may leave now.
You may leave now. Well, that's terrific because so many people don't hear that and they come, oh, you're so cute. Oh, look at the good doggy. And maybe that isn't what the dog wants. Some dogs, of course, love that and enjoy that. But not all dogs enjoy a stranger coming at them or petting their head or, reaching over them. These are not necessarily something that every dog wants. And so it's really important to listen and respect their wishes. So good for you, Michael, for getting that, because that could have been a bite. It could have been something really unpleasant and not a bite wouldn't just hurt you, it would hurt the dog in terms of his future or the owner's future. So, we want to prevent humans making mistakes that in some cases cost dogs their lives. We see that all the time that happens because the human didn't listen, didn't pick up the signal that the dog was communicating, and they missed it. And bad things can happen that way. So, again, just going back on principle number 5, this idea of listening and perceiving with all the senses, so that the notion of listening is not just being an auditory thing or not just being a visual thing, but being a perceptual thing. So the whole body will experience it. So let me just ask you, when you got that message from the dogs, did you feel it anywhere in your body, or how did you hear it? Did you feel it? Did you sense it? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was like a little gut punch.
Yeah.
Like solar plexus. It was like, oh.
Yeah. Excellent. So that's an example of listening, because your intention was, I'm going to go say hi to these dogs. Dogs love me. I love dogs. It's going to be fun, right? That was your thought. That's the thinking. And then you were fortunate that you perceived or listened and got the messages, no, we don't want to be approached. Stay away, back off, and immediately heard it, felt it, sensed it. And that's the difference between receiving a message from the dog and thinking, because the thinking was, I'm going to go pet these dogs. Dogs love me. I love dogs. This is going to be fun, but not necessarily for the dog. So you heard it, you perceived it, you felt it, in this case, your gut. And so when we, are learning, what we'll find is, like, for me, often one of the ways I can tell is thinking is very logical and linear, like it's sentences and, has a beginning, middle, and end and a grammar and all that, a period or an exclamation. But when animals talk to me, often, not always, because some animals will talk to me in full sentences, but often animals will talk to me, I call it a data download, like it's like the whole thing, like a whole movie in a second, like get the whole message in one instant, not in a linear sequence of subject, verb, or whatever, adjectives, whatever. It just is all I suddenly know exactly the whole story in a second, very fast. And the speed of that and the fullness of it, the holographicness of it, is one of the ways that I've learned, okay, this is from the animal and not from me. And sometimes also because it's surprising, like you had the idea, the intention was you were going to go make nice with the dogs, but they had a different idea, right? So you got that, and that is so important. So one of the things that we learn is some people are very visual. They see images. Though the dogs will show them pictures. That's not my predominant sense when I talk to animals, is visual, and dogs are not predominantly visual, so they will often communicate differently to me. Each animal has its own way of communicating. Each species communicates a little different. So that I call it like radio channels. Like each one has their own, like 98.7 or 100.1. They're like a little bit different. They're similar. They have a similarity, but they also have a uniqueness, if that makes any sense. And that, like with horses, like I work with a group of horses, and one horse will communicate to me these very powerful spiritual messages, and other horses will just tell me very basic things like, I want more treats, So it's interesting to see that. So that's one of the things that we want to have our students practice, is just paying attention to the sensation. What does thinking feel like? So thinking often generates emotions, right? Thinking about something that you feel good about, or you feel bad about, or you feel stressed about, or anxious about, or frightened, or whatever it is, thinking generates emotions. But this type of communication, it's not emotionless, because sometimes it has emotions, but emotions are not the driver, if that makes sense. They're not driven by emotions. So emotions come alongside, like you might feel sweetness or sadness. If this animal's telling you a sad story, it can be sad. They make me cry sometimes, they tell me a sad story. But for the most part, the emotion is subtler and it just has a different quality to it. It's not sticky. You know how our own emotions are sticky. Like if we get into anger or fear or something, it can really hang in there and it stays with us for a while. It's hard to shake it off. It's, we really spin some more thoughts about it and then it gets bigger and, it kind of, accelerates. But and working with animal emotions, it's usually like a very soft flow. It comes, it's big, and then it goes away. So it has that kind of curve effect, So that's one of the ways that I can tell it's an animal emotion versus my own human emotion, which is very sticky and stubborn. And I'm convinced I'm right about something,
Well, we attach stories to
the stories.
An event. We create a story that goes along with the event, and that's what makes it stick so much.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, the animals are less likely to develop, they can do it, they will do it, but less likely than we are to develop that story. And therefore, it's just a simple moment. And then when the next simple moment comes, they can change quickly. So if they're upset about something, they want to go out, but you open the door and now they're happy. It's just that moment of longing to go out is gone and it's replaced by the, oh yay, we're going out, so that fluidity of emotions is something that is one of the gifts that animals give to us if we're willing to learn that, is the potential for the fluidity of emotional experience, because they are much more likely to do that because they're more than likely in the present tense. Now, animals who've been traumatized, who have had some difficulties, they can get stuck just like we can, but they're less likely to do it, or they're more easily able to release that. So that is something that we want to encourage people to consider. And then our sixth principle is the notion of cultivating the practice of peaceful silence. Because if you're busy talking and thinking, the animal's like, oh, too much noise, right? It's not conducive to communication. So there's this one horse that I work with, his name is Blue. And he's in this wonderful place where he's a rescue, but he lives this beautiful life now with his herd. And he will only speak to me if I'm in my highest state. Like if I'm nervous or thinking or whatever, he wants nothing to do with me. He just ignores me. He does not mean to me, but he just has nothing to say. But if I get myself to to the best of my ability, a peaceful spiritual state, a full awareness state to the extent that I can do, he will converse, he will engage, and he will share with me something that's often brings me to tears, because not sad tears, but just, sweet tears, the tears of being touched and seen in a deep way that we crave with humans, but often don't get, because humans are often busy thinking and not able to engage on that level. So when you engage with animals who are ready, willing, and able to do that, it can be very sweet. It's very tender, very kind.
I was talking about this in a different way with a gentleman before, and I brought it up as an idea of being nurturing.
Yeah.
Right. And that is so hard for us because maybe I think most of us really didn't learn how to nurture, or maybe we weren't nurtured, but the animals, they just have this innate ability to show up in a nurturing way. Right?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. I remember we did a program in the women's prison in Hawaii. We brought the therapy dogs in and the miniature horses in and all this. And these are women who did not get very good nurturing from their mothers, and they also don't know how to nurture their own children. So they're very confused about what to do with their own children. And so the cycle just keeps repeating. And what we found is that they would nurture the dogs. The dogs, somehow, it would just be like, we didn't have to teach them. Well, we taught them, but mostly they felt it. They just knew what to do. You know what I mean? And we would talk about that. We'd talk about, okay, did you get this? No, I didn't get this. Do you give it to your kids? No, I don't give it to my kids. So how can we stop this cycle of non-nurturing that goes on in family systems? So animals can be very, very helpful to do that. We're going to be doing a program with some young kids later this month who are in some kind of emotional distress. So it'll be interesting. We're going to be bringing the dogs in, work with them. So Yeah, so the 7th principle, and then we'll take a break. But I just want to say the set is really easy. 3 words: practice, 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 which means that, once you get on board this train of wanting to learn animal communication, it takes a lot of practice, and you may or may not hit it out of the gate the first time, but that's irrelevant, because what's going to be important is that you stick with it, don't give up, and continue to perfect it. So I consider myself still a student of animal communication, even though I work with clients and work with animals and people pay me money to do this. I still consider myself a student.
Yeah. Well, and you should, right? Because the minute you think you know it all, you're done.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. You got it.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, let's take a quick break.
Sure.
Hey friends, if you like what you're hearing and want to learn more, check out Dr. Joseph's book, The Human-Animal Connection, Deepening Relationships with Animals and Ourselves. Or visit the website, thehumananimalconnection.org, to book an online consultation. Thank you for loving animals. Now back to the show.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Hey, welcome back, guys. We are having so much fun with this. I didn't even you realize that what I was doing as a kid was communicating with animals. It was just this thing that occurred and happened. And as Jeannie mentioned, you can lose it for a while. And I did. I lost it for years. And then I actually went and got trained with someone to pull my head up back out. And it's fantastic. Sometimes I do well, sometimes I don't. Yep. But it's amazing. If I'm willing to stay open and actively listen, like just listen, it's amazing what I get. So
yeah. If I have a day where I'm not in balance or not centered, and one of my clients will email me and say, I have 2 dogs and there's pee on the carpet. Who did it? And if I'm not feeling centered or something, I'm not sure. So I have to get myself centered. I have to get myself ready, and then I answer the question, and then it becomes clear. But, it does require a peaceful state of mind to do this work. And there are days that I just have to say to people, I can't communicate today, whatever, I got something going on. I don't feel well, whatever it is, So this is not like something that is always on. It's not like, it's something that you tune into or turn on. But sometimes I won't be expecting it, and an animal will start communicating with me. We had a bird outside the window the other day, and the nest fell, and bird was in terrible distress. There were 2 eggs in the nest, and we put the nest back up on the eaves, and the bird came back and to both of us and said, "Thank you." And I wasn't expecting that. I just happened to look out the window at that moment. The bird was sitting right on the railing, just staring at me. And I heard, "Thank you." Just a simple communication, so, and that was enough. That was enough to really help me understand. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
So when we talk about animal communication, typically it's this felt, noticed, heard sometimes, but heard internally sense. Most humans, we communicate mostly with words. We're not great at reading body language to begin with.
Right.
But when talking with the animals, what do you mean when you say you can communicate without words?
Yes.
Like go into that.
Yeah. So some animals communicate in pictures, some in words, and some in perceptions and feelings. And so we want to be open to all. And what I find is students generally have a strong suit. Some people are really good at visualizing. Some people are really good at hearing words. Some people are really good at feeling. But we want to try to expand our range so that we can relate to animals that communicate in different ways. So other than word communication. So that would be like a perception or a feeling or sensation in your body. Like you had that feeling with the dog's gut punch. Like they didn't say, "Stay away from me" in words, right? They didn't tell you that, but you felt it as a gut punch in your center, your solar plexus. That's an example of communicating without words. So before, if your mind had to think it through, your mind thought it through afterwards, which is fine. But the point being is that it takes longer to say it in words, "Don't come near me," than it took for that dog to go boom and hit you right in the gut and say, "Don't come near me," without the words. So there are animals who communicate in full sentences. You can have conversations back and forth, and clients will often ask me this to dialogue with their animals, and they'll do that. And sometimes they get tired of the words and they'll just go into pure experience, So it isn't usually these conversations are brief. They're not as chatty as we are, but they can chat in words. We just want to be open to the possibility that as a receiver, you might be a perceptual receiver. You might be getting it as bodily sensations as you did with those two dogs. And that was a really important experience, right? Because you realize, okay, I didn't hear it in words. I put it into words afterwards. You were able to articulate it, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, right? Because you interpreted it through your human thinking system, but it doesn't matter. You got it as gut punch first, and then you were able to connect it to the words. That is, really an important notion, because as humans, we are very attached to words. We think that the words are primary, which is why people can lie to us, because we believe the words. We ignore the body language. The body language, somebody goes, "I love you." And we say, "Oh, that person loves me," instead of paying attention to the tone of voice and the energy and the body language and the mixed message of that. And what's so fun about animals is that they generally, not always, but generally communicate coherent messages, meaning "I love you" is "I love you," not "I love you, but I wish you'd give me more treats." It's "I love you." You know what I mean? Whereas with humans, it's like "I love you, but I wish you'd change it about 1,000 ways."
Yeah. Trained conditioning, right? So.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want to tell you one fun story. My teacher, James French, with the trust technique, and he had an experience that was so amazing that I don't think he'll mind me telling the story, because he tells it in class. He was working with a woman who had a horse, and the woman also, her daughter had a horse. And the mother believed in animal communication. The daughter, no way did she believe that it was possible to talk to animals. And so the mother asked, "Would you work with my daughter's horse?" And James said to the daughter's horse, because she knew the daughter didn't believe anything at all. She was just putting up with her arms crossed, like, oh no, I have to do this now. So James said to the daughter's horse, "Tell me something that only your person knows. You better tell me a secret, or she's not going to believe any of this, right? She'll never believe it ever again. Here's the one time, you got to." So the horse took just a fraction of a second and told James, and turned his head to the corner of the barn and said, "Sometimes she doesn't want to walk to the house to go pee, so she just goes and pees in the corner." Okay. And James told this girl the story, and the girl that was it. She was convinced, because nobody knew this except the horse had been watching this process. He had no judgment about it. The horse had no judgment about it, but it was something that completely convinced her, because it was a secret. And so, I tell this story because I so admire it. James was such a great animal communicator. And I when I was first learning, I was like, "Oh, I'll never be as good as James. And maybe I never will be as good as James," but I had to learn that I could be as good as Jeannie. So like we talked about a moment ago, we're still in a learning process, but it's really beautiful to be able to communicate with animals in a way that helps the human understand. It's basically about us coming to an awareness that animals have thoughts and feelings and emotions and opinions. And when we communicate with them, we can't ignore that any longer.
Yeah,
so
we can try.
We can try. So I know we barely touched the surface here. We barely scratched the surface. We're going to continue this conversation in part 2 on opening the door to animal communication. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Michael.
I'm excited. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you for tuning into the Human Animal Connection Show. Please visit our website, thehumananimalconnection.org. There you can sign up for our free email newsletter, book a consultation, or check out our blogs and resources. Our best-selling book, The Human Animal Connection, is available on Amazon, and your donation of any amount keeps our nonprofit organization providing life-changing services. You can reach Michael Overly, author of Let Your Dog Lead, Musings on How to Create an Exceptional Life, on his website at dogsandmen.com, or email michael@dogsandmen.com.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.